Hey guys, welcome to this week's Money and Investing Show. This week we are talking Clash of the Titans. There's some huge moves going on in markets right now where some of the real juggernaut organizations are starting to flex their biceps and take advantage of some opportunities that we're starting to see created. We're going to talk about Apple versus the buy now, pay later space. We'll talk about Disney versus Netflix. And of course, richest man on the planet, Elon Musk versus Twitter. Plenty to take out of this, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the show. Hey guys, welcome to this week's Money and Investing Show with me, your host, Andrew Baxter, and as always, my offsider and co-host, Mitchell Laurential.
Thank you for having me on the show, Mr. Baxter. Absolute pleasure to be here as always. Looking good today, looking like a titan, which is exactly the title of today's podcast. I know these segues get better and better. Clash of the Titans. We've got a few areas to cover here, streaming, but more importantly, buy now, pay later. We've just seen some new revelations in that space, and we're going to digest it all today.
Indeed, massive moves in this space, and it's fascinating for us mere mortals that are on the sidelines to sort of see this at play when the real big guys roll their sleeves up and get stuck in. And plenty of examples of that in the marketplace at the moment. So yes, Clash of the Titans. And I guess what we're looking at, and we talk about this in previous podcasts, first mover advantage is the huge thing. You know, we talk about the likes of getting an Uber as opposed to a Lyft or Ola, or we talk about Netflix and Stan versus some of the other streaming companies that have come in. These have dominated marketplaces by being the early mover, the first mover, and they've kind of owned that segment. And having kind of laid the road down, somebody else has now invented the car to drive across it. And this is, I think, a major crossroads as we start to see these titanic companies come into play. The T-Rex, this alpha male, supercharged beast of predatory instinct is on deck and certainly dominating.
When you think about dominating, we think Apple, naturally, of course, biggest company in the world.
Yeah.
Not the first time they've done something like this they're about to share. You think about Fitbit watches, then there were Garmin's, and now there's Apple watches, which is now arguably the most accepted, fitness watch. Yep. They're doing much the same in the buy now, pay later space.
Look at the music industry, look at TV, everything that they effectively put their mind to, they can dominate, resource-wise. And I guess I'm just having received delivery of my new MacBook today, I'm a disciple of Apple insofar as I'm part of the cult too. But, their ease of use, simplicity, everything talks to each other, and yes, you pay more for it, but do you care? Probably not. And their latest move, of course, into the Apple Pay Later, the buy now, pay later space has sort of ruffled a few feathers. And we've seen that across the sort of industry leaders, with Afterpay, which is of course now part of Square or Block. We've seen the effect on Sezzle and also Klarna and these different companies. The T-Rex in the space is there, so let's dive into it.
Makes a lot of sense. If you've got an iPhone, the new way, you just simply swipe right, and then on Apple Pay you've got 4 easy payments with interest free.
That's right, it's all budgeted, laid out for you. This payment's coming out on this date. It's pure Apple genius insofar as making it easy, literally sliding the cursor to the right. But I guess where Apple has its dominance is that 85% of retailers in the US already set up for Apple Pay, so they've got a gargantuan market share really before they even start, giving them a tremendous tailwind. And again, the companies that have been at the vanguard of building out that buy now, pay later space, have created a market, and they've seen that market and gone, okay, we'll have our slice of that, thank you.
So what would be the result in the stock market, AB, considering?
Yeah, look, I mean, you take a look at Square Block, which acquired Afterpay, and that was an interesting deal. I think it was, 38 billion, but it was done on the basis of a stock swap. So when you look at what's actually happened to the price of SQ or Block's shares, they've come down from a couple $100 to about 80 and change right now. That deal's really about a $12 billion deal now when you take into account the stock move. Did they pay too much for Afterpay? Yes, I think they did. It's a business that doesn't make money and is a concept which is not cash generative, and so they're going to have their own issues digesting that business. And Jack Dorsey, if anyone's going to do it, I'm sure it's him, be able to turn that around into a success story, presumably by blending it with the synergies of the Square technology for doing your transaction. But the waters, far from being clearer, have just become rather muddied with the big guy in town coming in and saying, righto, we're here to play, and we're going to do it very well, as they typically do with most things. So that's going to exert a lot of pressure on the sector. You look at Klarna as another example. They laid off, I think, 10% of their workforce last month. So a lot of these companies are really struggling. And you have to remember, we've been through boom times in terms of consumer spending, and we're far from boom times now. So, the vulnerabilities in those businesses already exposed in terms of, slower consumer spending, more regulatory scrutiny, maybe a little bit of bad PR, none of which has really helped that sector. And now you've got the big guy coming into play.
Okay, so a question for you, AB. We're in a situation in markets right now where we're monetary tightening, so interest rates are going up. The idea is to cool inflation and slow consumer spending. Why would a business like Apple, knowing that, likely get into a business which is buy now, pay later? Is it the opportunity to take advantage of people having less money, therefore wanting to spend over periods of time?
Look, there are a number of lenses that you can look through, and if you were thinking in an altruistic way, it's to help people out by giving them the ability to spread payments, not in a payday loan form, but perhaps in an interest-free repayment system, which engenders a lot of goodwill for people when they're struggling a little bit. But at the same time, when you've got access to perhaps more money than you should, and our view on buy now, pay later, I think, has been more than covered through podcasts several times. It's an unconscionable business. It's effectively predatory lending if you look at it through those lenses, where you're encouraging people to buy things they technically can't afford by giving them a soft and easy payment plan to work through. Are you helping them? Possibly not. But that's where that sector kind of operates. And I guess, from Apple's perspective, if consumer spending is slowing down and you've got the ability to help people continue their consumer spending but split it over 4 easy payments without it incurring any interest for them, then through that lens, then you're probably helping them. Time will tell.
Here to save the economy. Thank you, Apple.
Yeah, well, it's better than we're from the government, we're here to help. At least if we're from Apple, we're here to help. There's a chance that they may well deliver, but there we go.
And they usually do, being Apple. So, AB, when we talk about Clash of the Titans now moving swiftly on to streaming, because that's been a big area of growth recently. We talk about Disney, versus Netflix. What's the story there?
Yeah, once again, Netflix first mover advantage, and Netflix is not a new business. It's been around for an awful long time, and for those with a decent memory, you probably recall seeing the vending machines at shopping centres and bus stations and train stations where, you put your membership card in, you got your DVD, you watched it, you had to post it back, and then when they received the DVD, you got a credit to access another one for the month, kind of thing. That was how its model used to be.
Wow, that's so archaic. Isn't it?
So it's been around for a while. It's not by any stretch a new kid on the block, and its dominant stake, I think, in the streaming space is what it has been, first mover. It's been the dominant force in there, and yes, there are lots more smaller, let's call them Amora fish, the little fish that swim next to a shark. It's kind of been a bit like that for Netflix, and they've had an incredible subscriber growth, 222 million subscribers globally. I think their subscriber growth for the previous quarter was about 8.3 million new subscribers, which is tremendous. Now, the flip side, their results weren't great. They lost a lot of subscribers through the conflict and the embargoes, for example, with Russia, doing business with Russia. But the real pressure, I think, is really starting to come from Disney, and we pointed this out again some time ago. When you get a company like Disney, which is, again, an apex predator in its space. Now, don't get me wrong, Disney isn't necessarily a mean or nasty business. It is the dominant force because it owns all of the content. And in the past, Disney has fed its content to Netflix, and that deal terminated quite some time ago as Disney started to embark on its own streaming business, Disney Plus. And you think of the range and breadth of title that Disney have. So obviously you've got Disney, you've got things like Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction with Miramax. You've got Lucasfilms for the Star Wars type. You've got Toy Story and all the animated stuff in there as well, and just about everything in between. 21st Century Fox, the back catalogue there. So Disney's got this vast catalogue of content that it can stream, but it's also got that track record and history of being a production line for new movies too. So it's constantly adding to its stable. So when it decided to move into the streaming space, again, somebody else has sort of paved the way and started a new type of business, and they've obviously sat back a little and watched to see if this is a sort of fad or whether it's something that's got legs. Clearly it's more than got legs. It's the way we all consume content now, and they're going, right, time for us to get in. And if you look at the sort of unbelievable velocity of subscriber acquisition that they've had. We talked of Netflix in the previous quarter added 8.3 million subscribers. Disney added 11.8 million new subscribers over the same time frame.
That's crazy.
They're big numbers, and whilst it's currently sitting at about 130 million subscribers on its platform, their intention by 2024 is to be at or past the Netflix level, and I'd say they're well on trajectory for that. That caused a lot of turmoil in that sector. We've spoken previously about budgeting, actually, where people have got lazy subscriptions. It's only $5 a month here, or 13 there, or 25 for this or that, and all of a sudden you've got several monthly subscriptions to streaming services. As we're going into a tightening phase within the economy, you will start to see people cut back on some of those unnecessary expenses that they have as they're trying to make their budget balance. And I think Disney, with its breadth of content, is probably the last place that you're going to cut content or a subscription because of what it's able to offer. So it's got the ability to exert tremendous pressure, and because its business isn't just we're a streaming provider, that's just a facet of Disney's business. You've got obviously movies. You've got theme parks and hotels, plus much merchandising.
Retail,
and everything else that goes around it. This is just one element of its business. So it's just added on a vast revenue line to its already bemouthed business. Really smart. And hence why it's a titan in its sector. And if you're the likes of Netflix or Stan, look, Netflix is big enough to weather the storm. There's no question about that. But it is a competitive sector now, and that means that you've got to be more aware from a price value presentation to the consumer. You've seen Netflix, for example, tighten up on password sharing, which is usually a good early sign. We've spoken about this previously, but it's a really good early sign of a company that's trying to manage its cash flow more carefully and stop any leakage, I suppose, within its revenue lines. And if you've got Disney chomping at your heels, that's probably not a bad policy to have.
Totally. So to think about this from a stock market perspective, AB, if you had to pick which business, either Disney or Netflix, that you'd be buying, noting Disney owns its own films, Netflix doesn't, of course, which one would you be?
Yeah, look, I mean, from a number of reasons, not just in terms of the origination of content, you look at the sort of multiples that the businesses trade on. Netflix has traditionally been on a very high multiple. In high inflation environments, companies that are on high multiples get punished, which we've already seen. Disney has always had a pretty dependable revenue line, earnings line, dividend line, and so is a far more conservative company that's added high-tech streaming as part of its business rather than that's its operation in its totality. So I think Disney is a significantly lower risk play. Netflix isn't going anywhere. It's going to be able to ride the storm out, but it's now got competitive pressure that it didn't previously have at a time in the market where perhaps people are being a bit more careful and circumspect as to where they spend their money. So I'd back Disney in that fight any day of the week.
All right. Well, I'd love to hear from our listeners too, by the way, before we move on. Comment below how many streaming services that you have and what they are. I think we're going to see multiple each comment.
I was just thinking while we're having this conversation how many we've got in our household, and
how many?
I think we're probably 5 or 6, I would think.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Probably 5 or 6.
When you add that up per month for the average household, that's $50 a month or something like that, right?
All adds up. And in this time where again people are watching the bottom line, that might be an area that people cut back a little bit on.
Indeed. Now moving forwards and swiftly on, AB, to another topic of money, but someone who probably doesn't need any more of that, and that's Elon Musk with the Twitter/Tesla acquisition merger, which you'd call it.
Yeah, look, this one I think is a huge shake-up on so many different levels, and again, when you've got the ultimate apex predator and titan of titans, if you will,
richest guy in the world
for a reason. This is without listing SpaceX. Imagine when he's listed that, what the potential number could look like. It's high time, I think, that some of the social media platforms were called into line, and we've got a love-hate relationship with Facebook. Obviously, we're quite active on there from a business perspective, and it can be incredibly frustrating. And you see the number of fake accounts and people spamming your Facebook page and things like that. And it almost seems that Facebook as an organisation is they don't care, because the number of users they've got on there, whether they're fake or real, is probably good for the business to be seen. And I think bringing that into line with the Elon Musk story, the offer to buy Twitter for was it $54 a share?
Yeah, $54.20, something like that. Right?
Which was a big number, and we've seen the tech sector come off quite heavily. That now looks like a very generous number to offer up, and I think the strategy that perhaps Musk is playing is that let's see if we can get a better deal, and the avenue they're going down is to say, well, what we offered to buy for $54 a share isn't what we thought it was, because the number of fake accounts on Twitter are far more, or we believe them to be far more than the 5% or so that you're claiming.
It's probably more like 20, right?
Well, if you take Joe Biden as an example, 50% of Joe Biden's Twitter followers are fake accounts, they're bots.
Did he buy them himself to ramp up his numbers?
Maybe his son did with the money that he got from Russia. Who knows? But that was on his laptop that didn't exist. But let's not get buried into into conspiracy theories. You got to read the New York Post for that, the New York Times. The reality is that anyone that's got any experience with social media knows that there are huge numbers of bots that are out there doing various things for various reasons, and what is done by flagging this is really shining a light on the bushel that these platforms that claim to have billions of subscribers, are those numbers bona fide? Are they real subscribers or users and actively engaged people on that platform? And in the case of Twitter, I think the case is no, but also that's a very good lever for Musk to use to drive the price down and maybe get a more attractive deal. He may end up walking away, and I'm sure there'll be a breakup fee, $1 billion or so, in terms of a breakup fee for walking away from that deal, but it would make big commercial sense to walk away from it. Or, knowing what his sort of business personality has been like, to fight his corner and stand up for, if you want freedom of speech, you want a level of transparency, that's what he wants to bring to Twitter. But if we're going to talk about transparency, be honest about the subscribers that you have on the platform, and let's cut the junk out, open the books, let's see how many of them are robots, and then we can revalue the business accordingly. And that's going to be an interesting one to see how it plays out, because that will set a benchmark, I think, that's got the potential to revalue and reappraise market valuations on not just obviously Twitter, but a number of the other platforms that are there in the social media world as well. And that could have some fairly significant ramifications on share prices, obviously.
So in the stock market, AB, as we come to the conclusion of today's episode, would you be trading either stock, Tesla or Twitter at this stage?
Not at this stage. My strategy over the last sort of 4 or 5 months has been, I'm not going to say defensive, but has been more special situations orientated. I've certainly not been in tech. I've got a short tech play running. I've got a short NASDAQ position running as we speak, but more towards trading volatility, trading interest rates, trading energy prices, because this is the first time for an awful long time where we've seen for the last 10 years the stock market outperformed commodities, but now we're in a commodities outperform stocks environment. So I'm positioned to exploit that when the dust settles a little bit. Maybe have another look at some of the value that's in tech, because there are some great businesses in there, as we've spoken of previously, but they're massively overvalued in some instances, particularly if from a user perspective, more than 5%, maybe less than 50%, somewhere in between. 25% of the people on the platform could be bots, which effectively has given you a 25% overvaluation on a business. So interesting times.
Indeed, we've discussed a few battles today, AB, and also some potential friendships. Are there any final words you'd like to cap us off with today?
I wonder if you could buy Twitter in 4 easy payments using Apple Pay. That would be pretty cool, wouldn't it?
$20 billion a month for the next few months.
Something like that. Interesting times. But no, when you see the sort of numbers thrown around and the actual size of the organisations that are involved in these tussles, as I say, for us mere mortals on the sideline, we watch in awe at these moves, and audacious as they are, particularly I think in terms of Apple's move into that space where it's like, thank you. Yeah, well, I think we'll have that into our stable in just the same way that Disney has done it. Probably, I guess, a lot of the last few years has been focused on particularly tech entrepreneurs. And when you see these older school businesses, and I'm including Apple as an older school business,
it's been around.
In that it's been around since the 70s, that these mature companies, you can teach an old dog new tricks. Maybe that's something you can help me with.
I'm sure I can help you with that, AB. Thank you very much.
How's that for a segue to finish on?
Absolutely. Way better than mine. Maybe I need to do some learning off you.
Good stuff. There you have it, guys. Make sure you give us a review and a rating, and we'll look forward to hosting you next week.